Shane, you just played us a recording of the new Prime Minister of Canada's what uh speech to the Canadians or something like that about US
Yeah,
Canadian relations.
basically, basically he just gave a remark. I'm guessing it happened this morning. But he just gave a remark and said that Canada is going to be working toward, regardless of what the US does, regarding like tariff policy, regarding like defense policy, whatever. That he's going to start like basically that Canada is going to start pivoting away from the United States. They're going to start unintegrating their economy from our economy, or I guess from their point of view, they would say disentangle their economy from our economy and kind of and pivot themselves elsewhere. I'm guessing that they would pivot themselves toward their mother, the UK. You know.
Yeah, he says here the old relationship we have with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperation, is over. Carney said during a press conference following a meeting in Ottawa with his ministers to discuss trade options in response to Donald Trump's permanent 25% tariffs on all imported vehicles and auto parts. So this is after the newly imposed tariffs um, by the United States on Canada, right? Um,
Mhm.
you know, Trump has been talking a lot about taking over or taking control of Greenland, right? So we got two big countries just right above us, neighboring countries or whatever that uh Trump thinks should be more should be closer to us in short, right? Than they are.
Well, what if we look at this from another point of view? Because I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people looking at this in terms of U.S. Canadian relations and the tariffs and everything. What do you think this means for the Commonwealth, for the British Commonwealth?
You know,
Because
that's
it
that's yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting you brought that up, man, because here's the thing is I saw in a recent uh news article that Trump was saying that it sounded good that the United States could be a part of the Commonwealth sports games. That like the
Mm.
UK had invited the US to join the Commonwealth games. So I don't know. That's
So I wonder what that would mean.
yeah. I mean, okay. Um, you said that Canada would that would potentially bring Canada closer together with his mother, uh, you
Hmm.
know, uh, the United Kingdom. But then some might say, okay, but the U.S. is also a child of Great Britain, you know, an estranged, an estranged child of Great Britain.
Yeah.
Um, should we not should we not have the same sort of brotherly love or uh, childlike relationship with the United Kingdom?
At this point in history, I think the thing that we have most in common with the UK is our language, and I think that's probably about it.
Yeah.
Especially when you think about in 50 years what we will probably look like and what they will probably look like. America will probably be. I don't really know what the belief system will be in America, but I think the UK will probably become either an Islamic republic or it'll be
Mm.
a a very a probably the first major Western country to become predominantly atheist. I
Okay.
think it's going to be
Yeah.
mainly atheists and Muslims in UK predominantly, and because of that, I think that we would really have even less in common with them than we do now. I mean, they'll still be speaking. Well, I think we'll all still be speaking the same language, though.
Yeah. The UK's been sort of rocked with a lot of what insurity, or cultural shifts, hasn't it, over the
Mhm.
past couple of years? You know, um, I remember they were talking about, what had happened. Wasn't it Elon Musk who was saying something about was it some kind of gang or something that was there? Like a
In the UK.
yeah. They were like,
Um,
I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't a gang, but it was something like they were these adult males who were coming primarily from
oh, you're talking about the well,
Pakistan.
I don't know what word we're allowed to use, but
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about.
yeah, like well, yeah, the grape gangs,
Yeah, yeah,
I think is what they were called. They were
the grooming.
like Brit they were at like British finishing schools, and I think it was a lot of I think they were saying it was a lot of Pakistanis,
Yeah.
or but then it turned out that it was not just Pakistanis. It was also a lot of those those like aristocratic
Mhm.
uh British uh
Elites.
boys from aristocratic families and stuff. I don't really remember a whole
Yeah,
lot about it. I remember just seeing it and just thinking, well, that's a really degraded and degenerate country. You know, just
yeah, yeah. When do you think that started though, man, Shay? Because here's the thing, like uh we've talked about how there's a lot of British intellectuals and stuff like that, historians, politicians, whatever, who've been talking about the sort of cultural erosion of, the British, the English speaking world, and specifically Great Britain, right? And how, it's the things that they sort of cared for in the past, they don't care for anymore. And that is because of the fact that Great Britain has this sort of complex, feeling that they are the initiators of colonialism, you know, um, you know, uh, inequality, right? Um, or what have you, So this whole thing of like, what am I, I guess, okay, you might say like, in a sense, it's cultural white guilt.
mm.
They feel bad about the fact that they colonized the world, or whatever, uh, the laws that have been, passed down in the English speaking world, or
Well, and you know, I think in many ways what tends to happen is when you have a lot of people. I think when you embrace nationalism and you incorporate people into your nation that really don't want to be a part of it by force. I think one of the most practical ways that you go about keeping everybody together is you have to have external threats. You know, like, so the English, so the story of the UK is really the English domination of everybody else on the island of Britain. You know, the English domination of the Scots and the Welsh. Now, the Scots seem to be pretty happy with it. You know, at this point in history, they just seem to like roll over and just be like, oh yeah, we love it. We
I mean,
love being dominated
they,
by the English. But the
yeah.
Welsh, on the other hand, the Welsh hate the English. You know, and then there's also Northern Ireland. You know, and what the method that the English used to subjugate so many peoples around the world, and I think both of us would agree that it's really easy to use Great Britain as a punching bag, you know. because they're not powerful. They're not powerful anymore. I mean,
Right.
they're not a significant country except for nuclear weapons. You know, kind of like North Korea. I mean, they're obviously wealthier than North Korea, but I don't really think people would care that much about Great Britain if they didn't have nukes. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
but they everything that they rolled out to the rest of the world, they tested and incubated in their invasion of Ireland first, you know? And and I think that the UK will eventually have to deal with, I think specifically England. And I'm not saying that like English people have any English people don't have anything to feel sorry or guilty about, especially the ones living now. They weren't even the ones that really benefited from subjugating the Irish or subjugating the Indians or subjugating whoever around or subjugating people in Africa, subjugating whoever in the world. Like the people in England that are our age right now, they're not really the ones that benefited from that largely. You know, it was people that lived a long time ago. But I guess the thing I'm saying is that as 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 Great Britain's ability to project her to create monsters abroad and to cathartically project all of their internal conflict onto external conflicts, as that ability becomes less and less and less as time marches on, and they become a poorer and less significant country, then they are going to eventually, I think, have to reckon with um, the fact that the Welsh really don't like that the Welsh have a lot of issues with the deal that they got in the UK,
Yeah.
and the Irish in Northern Ireland are have a lot of legitimate problems with the English maintaining control of Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I,
and then the Irish in general have a really big problem with that. You know,
yeah. I mean, I think Ireland has its own internal problems,
yeah, big time.
even outside of like Great Britain, right? Aren't they having like um immigration issues too? Cultural sort of
Yeah,
assimilation. This it's the same. You might say with Canada, right? It's having uh problems with its the mass immigration and everything, and this I don't know if they have open borders or whatnot, but they're having certain issues too, and then also another one, and it's what's funny is like all these are sort of commonwealth or what used to be colonies of Great
hmm,
Britain, but another one is South Africa, right,
yeah,
which is being rocked by economic and political uh problems too, right. You know
yeah. Well, the problem in South Africa is they're becoming a less and less functional country, like
right.
economically and just the ability of the country to work. You know,
Right.
because I think it was in 1994 that everybody in South Africa got the right to vote, and that apartheid came to an end, and there was a lot of optimism in South Africa at that time among everybody. People are saying that it was. I think they called it the. I think they call it the rainbow. They called it the Rainbow Nation or the Rainbow Movement or something. This was not an LGBTQIA plus whatever kind of thing.
Mhm.
This was about like people in South Africa transcending their race and identifying themselves as being one people.
Right.
And that has not worked because people are still hanging on to a lot of issues from the past, like
Past grievances. Yeah.
yeah. And the thing is, it's really interesting. I was reading an article the other day about what's going on in South Africa right now, and apparently, so there are the Zulu, and then there's the other large group that are not Zulu, that are from somewhere else.
Is it like the Xhosa people or something?
that I don't remember, but
Yeah.
apparently them and the Zulus hate each other.
Okay.
And the thing is that so apparently right now, if I understand it correctly, the Zulu are becoming more moderate voice,
Mhm.
and the other group, what was
I,
that tribe?
I believe it's the Zosa.
The Zoso, or whatever their name is,
Yeah.
um that they're the very radical ones that are singing like how at a lot of political events in South Africa they sing kill the boer,
Hmm.
which boer it is a word for like for white Afrikaner, for white South Africans that are called Afrikaners. And they sing that at political rallies. Well, apparently the Zulu are getting concerned that that the minute that the Boer are not a legitimate scapegoat anymore, and this isn't the way that they're talking, but from the way it sounds like the minute that the Boer are no longer a legitimate political scapegoat any longer, they're concerned that the other tribe are going to start scapegoating the Zulu. And so the thing is, you have all these South Africa, it's falling apart into a bunch of warring racial factions. And it's not it's not black and white down there, really. I mean, it has been black and white because of apartheid, but as the hangover from apartheid, I think, goes away, you're going to have, like, I think people are going to start getting tribal down there,
Yeah.
and they're going to have to be very they're going to have to be very careful, and they're going to have to figure out something. They're going to have to figure out something to make things work. One thing I was thinking about is maybe what they could do is um is decentralized power in the country, like make it so that local communities have more autonomy over how they're governed, so that then you can't have one faction take control of the central government and wield that against their political enemies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. And I guess here's the thing, like, I know that in South Africa, the
It's a
native,
bad situation down there, no matter how you cut it, I think.
yeah, the I mean, yes, that I believe I believe is not good, right? But
Yeah.
I do believe that the nations, the tribal nations in South Africa, um, quite a few of them have kings, right?
Yes.
And some of them are chieftaincies and stuff like that. So the Zulu have a king, I
Hmm.
believe the Xhosa people have a king too. Um, and then there's the bordering countries that are like actually within South Africa, like surrounded by South Africa, and that's Lesotho, um,
Yes.
and um, Eswatini, which used to be called Swaziland, you know.
Oh, okay. I
Um,
didn't know that.
yeah. So the thing is I think they have a certain level of autonomy, but someone was I was reading something or listening to something they were talking about how the the problem is that these tribal groups are not able to really politically separate themselves from the ANC.
Yeah.
The sort of, I guess, the governing political party in South Africa, and it's been there since, I think, since Mandela,
Yeah.
who himself was I think, a part of the Xhosa nation and a part of the royal family. You know,
Well,
the
it's become very much like a cultural thing, hasn't it? Like,
Yeah,
if your parents were ANC members, then you're going to be an ANC member
right, right.
down
But
there.
so I guess I say that all to say what people might say, well, Great Britain has did a lot for these places that it colonized as far as you know, bringing in, like, common law, right? Um, Building infrastructure, right? Industrializing the country, bringing education to these countries, um, you know, allowing a lot of these, uh, allowing a lot of people within these countries, regardless of tribe, the ability to, be, um, to have upward upward mobility, right? So,
Yeah.
in other words, a lot of these places that we think about that were former colonies of Great Britain, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, India, Canada, you know, um, Ireland, they were able to send their kids to, say, boarding schools, send them to schools where they could, good schools like Cambridge and Oxford and, St. Andrews and, you know, all these prestigious schools and, um, have relations with the English speaking world, and they were able to, you know, through that education, through that those civil rights and everything, were able to gain their independence because of that,
Yeah.
and were able to, you could have a better economy and everything. So why does it seem to be breaking down? Why do a lot of these places that the English speaking world had a certain level of control over seem to be breaking down? Right. The only one that you can speak of that sort of has a that it seems to be maybe growing or whatever is maybe like India, with
Hmm.
Modi and um, you know, well, the United States. So, that
Yeah.
that that begs the question, like, what is the, you know, you have to ask yourself, well, what is the lesson that maybe they're getting out of this, this thing of decolonization and everything, right? Because India has taken a turn towards being more nationalistic, being more patriotic in a sense. Its historical narrative has really, the people have really reached back in history, even before the time of the Mughals, right? To a time of like when Hinduism was the national religion in India, or maybe not the national religion, but you know what I mean. It's sort of the bedrock or foundation of their culture. They're starting to, to embrace that more, I guess is the right word. So, what is the problem, say, with Canada or with South Africa or Australia, you know, um, or you might say even the United States. What's our issue that we can't sort of, and Great Britain itself, that our inability to sort of um, have that inspiration or that reignite sort of a narrative about ourselves, you know what I mean, or a sense of national identity. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I guess my question would be, is the national identity a a real thing, or is that a construct?
Mhm.
And if it's a construct, then what are the things that kind of that then what's the enforcement mechanism for it? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And as far as South Africa goes, unfortunately, I think one of the worst possible things to happen down there was the discovery of gold and diamonds. Because, I mean, simply put, the Brits didn't really give a damn about South Africa until they found out that there was gold and diamonds down there, and then they invaded it. yeah, I mean that's essentially what happened. And then what they did was trafficked people from all over the African continent down there. Because originally when the Afrikaners who settled South Africa in the, I think it was in the early, it was around the time of they were pilgrims, around the early 1600s when they fled Europe and went down to South Africa. They were French Huguenots, they were Danes, there were some Brits,
Dutch.
Germans, you know,
Yeah.
and but predominantly they spoke Dutch, you know, and
Hmm.
they went down there and started settled. And the only other people that they encountered down there, because for the most part, South Africa, it's kind of like, from what I understand, the terrain down there is not, it's not very, so it's good flat prairie land, but it's pretty dry. And
Okay.
so it's not easy to get it's it's not the kind of place where you can just just go throw some seeds in the ground and then all of a sudden you got food. Like there's a certain method that you have to use that they had to really figure out through trial and error, through a lot of starvation and stuff over time. um but when they got down there, there were not a whole lot of natives that lived down there. The only native tribe that lived down there were called the Khoisan people,
Okay. Hmm.
and there are actually relatively few of them left because,
Hmm.
unfortunately, everybody kind of beat up on them.
Right.
You know, the Brits, the British colonizers hated them. The Zulus hated them. The other, I'm guessing the other people, I don't know this for a fact or not, but I'm guessing the other people probably hated them. You know, they all hate the Khoisan, who were the original, like the original. And like if you want to talk about who has the original claim to the land, like, and if
Yeah.
that claim is based on who inhabited the land first, it's the Khoisan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There. I know
and
that.
the one thing they all agree on is they don't want the Khoisan to be around anymore. Period. That's just what
Yeah.
they all. None of them want that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know about the whole thing of the Bantu migration.
Mhm.
And all of these various groups.
Was the Bantu migration when the Brits and Cecil Rhodes and everybody brought people down to work in the mines?
No, the I believe the Bantu migration happened like thousands of years before that. Like
Ah, okay.
yeah, they would have they there's a bunch of theories about all this stuff, you know what I mean? But the one that I'm most aware of or privy to is that the Bantu speaking groups would came from further north, somewhere around like what is now modern day Cameroon and sort of southeast Nigeria,
Hmm.
and then migrated down into, what is now like the Congo and everything, and then further down in, all the way down to South Africa. So, the idea that like they would have
Would they be the Khoisan then, or would the
no, so the
Khoisan be, or
yeah,
would the
so
Khoisan be a different group?
the Khoisan are a different people. They're a different length. They have a different. They belong. I'm just going based off of language and stuff. They they
Hmm.
they speak a different language, and all the tribes that we were talking about in South Africa and everything, they all speak a Bantu language. So the Xhosa and the Zulu both speak Bantu languages. You know how they separated and everything is anybody's guess, but I would assume it's just like any other group. You start having you know the more alike you are, the more um confrontation you tend to have. That's
Mm.
speaking on a mimetic, I guess,
Yeah,
level.
yeah, it's a it's very complicated down there. I mean, that is one situation I would not want to be in. I would not
Yeah,
want to be involved in trying to, like, if somebody were to come to me and say, we're going to pay you like $10 million to solve this problem, I would tell them, I'd say, keep your money, because
yeah,
that's way above, that's way above my pay grade. I would not know what the first I don't know what my first recommendation would be down there, because the whole thing is so complicated. And then then during like what was it, the early 2000s, you had the big brain drain where because of the way everything was set up during apartheid, you basically had the wealth concentrated into the hands of um of whites and Indians down there. And then everybody else were kind of living in like shanty towns. And and then what happened was when the when the ANC won and integration happened, and there was this whole like popular movement to, I think they call themselves the Rainbow People or something like that. You had a big flight of a lot of the wealthy left. And a lot of the wealthy went to I think went to Britain. I think a lot of wealthy people, they fled the country. There were a lot of wealthy South Africans that went to Israel too. But there were a lot of wealthy South Africans that went everywhere because, you know what? In fact, this is what it was: is that um uh Zimbabwe had just it was sometime during the mid to late 90s that Zimbabwe started, the government of Zimbabwe began confiscating the land of of the white farmers. And so a lot of them fled had so many of them fled to South Africa during the 90s.
Okay.
But there were also a lot of people, there were a lot of wealthy white South Africans got spooked by that.
Okay.
And they were like, well, we're getting the heck out of here.
Right.
Um so you had a and these are the people that had like degrees. These are the people that were like engineers. These are the people that had vast land holdings and everything, that really understood at a technical level how to farm in a very special, in a specific climate like South Africa.
Right.
So what ended up happening, long story short, is you had the brain drain down
Okay.
there. And
Okay.
I think that's one of the biggest problems that South Africa is facing, is because now they have like they have a schedule of regular of when the power is going to be cut to certain neighborhoods, because they only have so much electricity that can go around,
Wow.
because they don't have the capacity anymore to maintain their power grid the way that they used to.
Wow. Is that because
um
they don't have people that are skilled
yes, yeah.
in
And
that
yeah,
area?
and what it
Wow.
is, yeah, and what it is that you had the flight of a lot of that generation of the skilled laborer, of the people that basically, the people who built the power grid down there, who understood how it worked. The generation that had succeeded them, they were the ones that all that kind of like industrial knowledge had been passed on to.
Mhm.
Many of them left. So, and the thing is, South Africa, what was a I mean was, and really still is, what was a very, very wealthy country. But the problem in South Africa has always been, when you have a lot of people that are poor, and you have a tiny handful of people that are very, very wealthy. It's usually not, that's not a sustainable system at all. And so
Yeah, it's still, yeah. It's
yeah,
it's
so like,
still
you still have like the Oppenheimer family down there, who
mhm,
own De Beers, which is the biggest diamond trading company on the planet.
mhm,
I think they're based in the city of London, but most of their operations are down in South Africa.
yeah,
Like the Oppenheimer family, they live on a vast estate that has massive concrete walls that go all the way around it, and then they have their own little private militia
yeah,
that protects them there. And that's actually something that you see in South Africa, is the wealthy people live in enclaves where they have their own private militias that protect them.
mm,
And then you have the have-nots that all live in like in squalor.
right. And so okay, the thing that sort of baffles me, or I wouldn't say baffles, but it's interesting to me, is that uh, when you look at, like, okay, what's going on in Israel, Palestine, right?
Hmm.
That was a British mandate, right? You think about what happened, and sort of what's continuing. I know I was talking about India and its nationalism and everything, but they still have problems with Pakistan,
Yeah.
and that was a British mandate or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
A partition.
Yeah.
Uh, South Africa,
Yeah.
so, and then Canada, it has, recently under Trudeau and stuff like that, has been having a lot of, social turmoil. You know,
Yeah.
there's been a large they've had migration problems, with a lot of sort of, I guess, Indian immigrants, um, who maybe have problems assimilating or, whatever. So, I think the question is like for all the good that Great Britain supposedly did, all these places are sort of cracking up or not exactly
Yeah.
as politically cohesive as they might have seemed, and I think that that's you know, you might not say it's deliberate, but because when we were coming up, like in high school and everything, there was this constant narrative about colonialism and decolonization, within academia, and
Yeah.
there were even classes for it, studies about this, like, post-colonialism, you know, and what that means for society and how these countries can take back their sense of integrity and their strength and everything, but it's it's like, okay, they end up doing that and things seem to like fall apart.
Well, I think the reason it falls apart is that one of the hallmarks of colonialism is that you you don't you don't pass technical knowledge of how the system works, like the power grid, for instance, like the hospital system and everything. You, it, one of the hallmarks of like a colonial system is, it's people from the colonizing country that are running all of those things,
Mhm,
and basically what they're doing is they're usually people that have a background in building the power grid in the colonizing country,
mhm,
in the home country of the imperial power.
mhm,
They're people that built out, that were involved in building out the hospital system, or running the hospital system, building out the power grid, developing an agricultural policy and all this kind of stuff. And
mhm,
so what they do is they go to the country, they're going to the colony, and what they do is they set things up and kind of replicate what they did. They replicate and adapt, and the thing is that whole, you can almost think about it like an engine, you know like they're installing an engine, that's adapted to the colony, but it is built kind of using the same recipe that was used in the home country. Yeah, but
mhm,
they obviously have to adapt it for climate and all kinds of stuff.
mhm,
Then what happens is when decolonization occurs, all the people who understand how that machine works, and everybody that understands how to fix the machine when it breaks, all the people who understand how to keep maintaining the machine, you know um they all leave,
yeah, yeah,
and then what ends up happening is you you because I think the excuse that was used in, like, during the Pax Americana post World War II Cold War age was America demanded that the European countries, give up their colonies. That was
mhm,
a policy that really began with FDR,
yeah,
and the European countries. There were a lot, they resisted. A lot of
yeah,
them resisted, and many of them successfully resisted fully giving up control, like the French and the Brits.
yeah,
Um, but what what America said they wanted to see was what we want you to do is to transition. We want for you to give everything over to the native population, and we will know that everything is okay when there's universal suffrage.
Right.
Well, the thing is, at a in a like at a feelings level, yeah, that makes us feel really really good, doesn't it? It makes us feel so patriotic and proud that these are demands our country made. But a big demand that should have been made is that it should have been like a slow transition, and there should have been like apprenticeship. Like you take somewhere like South Africa, for instance. For there should have been like a decade long plan. And the thing is, it's really easy for us to like look back at it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's much more difficult when you're going through it in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of emotion and a lot and
Yeah.
everything, and you can't see. It's much easier to look back than it is to look forward.
Right. Yeah.
And so really really what I think should have happened in somewhere like South Africa,
Mm.
is they should have had like a decade or maybe even 2 decade long apprenticeship program where like the people that were really like running things, like the linemen and the people that were running the plants, the engineers that were running everything, they should have been paired up with like two or three native students. And basically what the job should have been is that like the native student's job is basically to be the helpmate of the person running it, with the
Right.
idea that when it's time for that person to be replaced, their replacement would be one of their apprentices.
Right. Right.
you
But
know
now, see, one of the things though is that somebody might argue, well, okay, but they didn't want to be apprentices. They wanted to be lawyers, right? And intellectuals, right?
Mhm.
Um, and you know, because when you look at a lot of these you know, countries, say within Africa, where independence started, like you said, I think it was a thing of like a zeitgeist, emotional, like the political, you know, image of being independent from, excuse me, a, a political entity like Great Britain, as a global power or whatever, carried a lot of weight, like, we're this African nation, or we're, you know what I mean? It's like, okay,
Mhm.
you know, India is now on the move, after the Second World War, they've got Gandhi, you know what I mean? Russia's on the move, after the 1917 revolution, they're overthrowing their monarchical system, right? Um, other African nations are probably, we're thinking the same thing, like Kwame Nkrumah, you know, was somebody who, he went to school and then he was the first president of Ghana. So, um, and he went to school and majored in theology, you know,
Mhm.
and he came with, had this quote he used to say, seek ye first the political kingdom, and then everything shall be added unto it, you know.
Oh,
Of course, he's taken that from the Bible, seek ye first the kingdom of
yeah.
heaven, and on all things shall be added unto it. But I think you're right, yeah, the sort of this image that these places can now gain a certain level of autonomy, and they want to go to school to be sort of having that elite education and everything too. And they don't want to be, sort of apprentices or have certain technical skills. They want to wear the white wig and the robe.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? They want to be the professor, you know.
And that's the thing is it's really common for us to when we ask the question, what does it mean to be like a Western, wealthy, civilized country? A lot of people will, start saying words that really are like disembodied words, and they'll start
Mhm.
talking in platitudes. They'll say like, well, what it means is to be a democracy. Well,
Right.
what it means is to be is to be egalitarian and to love and to love thy neighbor and everything. But
Yeah.
in reality, what I think most people mean, I'm not even endorsing this. I'm just saying
Yeah.
I think what most people mean is easy living through technology and the mastery of chemistry. Yeah, like I think that's what most people mean because like when people you'll notice when people start talking about um like like America's status in Western nations and everything, they'll talk about infant mortality, right? Like they'll talk about access to healthcare, they'll talk about all this kind of stuff. That's the real metric is how much are you able to get in exchange for work,
Right.
and how easy is your life made by technology and how accessible is that, like access to electricity, how expensive is it for you to have air conditioning, how
Hmm.
expensive is it for you to have a to replace a hot water heater, and all these kind of things. So um so I guess to kind of put a bow on it, I think that what America did when we demanded decolonization, we wanted like a confession of values, and we wanted like an imitation of our values. Like we wanted to see democracy, we wanted to see universal suffrage, we wanted
Yeah.
to see like public education and all these kind of things. Well,
Right.
the thing is, if you go up if you look at what the higher order items are that make those things possible,
Mhm.
it's real. I mean, it's really like uh
Working infrastructure.
yes, yeah, working
Yeah.
infrastructure,
Yeah.
and most importantly, the technical knowledge of
Hmm.
individuals, or it's individuals knowing how to maintain and to repair
Right.
that infrastructure.
Yeah.
And when that is lost, it ends up collapsing in country. Like my 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 mom's family are Cuban, and one of the things that happened as a result of the Cuban Revolution was you had a brain drain in Cuba, where where a lot of Cubans who, simply put, many Cubans that couldn't afford to leave in the 60s were stuck there. And the
Okay.
Cubans
Yeah.
that could afford to leave, who happened to be the Cubans that had the technical knowledge, who
Yeah.
understood how the Cuban power grid worked,
Yeah.
who were petroleum engineers, who understood how the Cuban oil refineries worked and everything.
Right.
And also too, like the big Cuban sugar baron families and stuff, they all
Right.
fled the country.
Right. They came to the United States, didn't they?
Yep, and came to the US. And
Yeah.
a lot of them they had to give up everything they had in Cuba. They had to leave it all behind. The government ransacked
Right.
their money, their lands, whatever, and they came to the US, but because they had technical knowledge,
Hmm.
where they could grow sugarcane anywhere
Hmm.
and grow it on a vast scale, and they understood how to irrigate it properly. They understood all these technical little details.
Yeah.
That's worth a lot of money. And these are people that not only have like book knowledge of it, but they have experiential knowledge.
Right.
So the thing is, now the Cuban power grid, in fact, I think the Cuban power grid has been down for like 6 months or something. Like
Yeah.
it
Yep.
hasn't even been functioning.
Yep.
And back during the late 1960s, when Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and everybody were running rampant all over the island, um, they were feeding Russian oil through the Cuban oil refineries. And for anybody that understands the chemistry of oil, the oil that comes out of the ground in Russia is known in the world market as being sour crude. What sour
Okay.
crude means is that it has a lot of impurities in it. So you have to have, so it's a different refining process than it is for American crude, which on the world market is known as sweet crude. And
Okay.
what sweet crude means is that it has impurities, but it has far fewer impurities.
Okay.
So the refining process for American crude oil is actually less expensive,
Right.
less intensive, and less corrosive.
Right.
But
Plus, it's
but
much closer to Cuba,
right,
right? Yeah.
yeah, it's much less expensive. But when you have a country like the Soviet Union that really wasn't interested in selling things for currency, they were interested in like a bartering system where they would barter so many hundreds of gallons of oil for so many tons of Cuban sugarcane,
Mhm.
and they would exchange some tractors for this and all that.
Mhm.
Um, what you end up having though is you have a bunch of people after the brain drain, you have a bunch of people take over the oil refineries who just assume that it's just an input output thing.
Right.
You push this button and you get a banana.
Yeah.
And what they quickly discovered when they started feeding the Russian petroleum through the Cuban oil refineries that were built to refine American crude oil, it actually destroyed a lot of the oil refineries in Cuba.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so the only reason I say that is you have all these people who don't understand how the system works because they didn't build it. The
Right.
technical knowledge was not passed on to them.
Right.
And now Cuba is a complete and total mess.
Right.
I don't know, it basically everybody's in poverty there. They live in a scorching hot place. It's
Right.
scorching hot down there for most of the year, and nobody has air conditioning
Right.
because they straight up don't have electricity.
Right.
They can't even use, or they don't even have power for refrigerators if they have one.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so
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 they're having to do like post-industrial stuff to
yeah.
maintain a dysfunctional economy and state.
Yep, and
Right.
that's one of the reasons it is such a disservice to tell kids, go out and think about how you feel. Think
Hmm.
about what do you want to do?
Right.
How do you feel? Yeah,
Yeah.
like and everything. And it's like, oh, if you love art, go study art history at school. No, no, stupid. Don't do that. Go figure
Yeah.
out what other people need and go and do that thing. Like just it's not hard,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the thing, um and sad, and the thing is, in America, fortunately, we have not experienced a brain drain where in fact it's the
Hmm.
reverse here. We have a lot of
Yeah.
people
The
from other
reverse.
countries that understand the tech the how to technically repair and maintain complex, very very specific complex networks, and they want to come to the United States.
Right.
But
Right.
if that were ever to happen here, we would only be like 5 or 10 years away from a complete and total uh apocalypse of our way of, or an end of our way of life as we know it. And that's what
Yeah.
they're experiencing in South Africa, and that's what they experienced in Cuba.
Right. And so that now that takes us back to, just to land the plane here, that takes us back to sort of what what a lot of people in the United States, I think, thought here with Trump's administration is that his presidency was going to put a sort of, you know, put a put a timeout on that. You know what I mean? This whole, I think, thing of going to school to become some, you know, pseudo intellectual or something like that. You know what I mean? And then, you say, well, that's what's going on in Canada right now,
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, I think with this guy, whoever his name is, this new prime minister, he's not, I don't know
Carney.
if he
I
got
think his name is
elected
Mark
or if he's
Carney.
just replacing Trudeau for the period of time until the elections or something like that. Because I think, didn't they have, he called for like a snap election.
Yeah.
So I think he's just serving out the remainder of time up until the, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't really know, because I don't know how Canada works this thing. But
The parliamentary systems are complicated
yeah, but it's
compared to
you just,
ours.
you think about the fact that, okay, Canada and the United States were starting to, this whole idea of um thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, uh excuse me. We need to think more about, how we can be more inclusionary of minorities and everything. And all this, idea of multiculturalism and how everybody's a part of, everybody is a part of our society,
Yeah.
everybody has a place, right? And and I really think, man, like, academically, we have like really messed ourselves up in terms of that, right? Like I don't think
Yeah.
that the social sciences, whatever you want to say about them, you know what I mean, are really gonna. It's gonna take a long time, I think, for the social sciences and humanities and stuff to even really make a comeback. I mean, that's not to say that the that the tech and engineering and sciences and stuff like that have. I think in some ways they have made things economically bad too, because those fields have become very incentive driven,
Yeah.
right? What I mean to say is people don't go into those fields because they like it. They go into those fields because they want to make money, right? So
Yeah.
they're doing those jobs, but they don't like it. They're miserable. You know what I mean? And then on the other side, you got the people who do the humanities and the social sciences. They like the subjects, but they can't get on job. They can't work, you know?
Well, and too, I know this is going to be a very unpopular, and it may come off as being offensive to a lot of people, but
Mhm.
uh when you look at the fields that women are drawn to versus men,
Mhm.
you know, um and I'm not saying that there are a lot of men that go to college for things that are kind of like useless degrees. Like
Yeah.
I have a history and economics degree, which
Mhm.
I view as being kind of worthless. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm guilty.
Yeah.
I'm the first amongst the sinners.
Yeah.
Here,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the thing is, when you look at the social sciences, that's an almost entirely female dominated profession.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, in sociology and all, and even psychology.
Yeah.
So and I think a lot of the reason is that they're not grounded in anything that's practical.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like a sociology professor will be able to tell you a lot about all these arbitrarily constructed categories
Mhm.
of, like, the LGBTQIA plus.
Mhm.
They'll be able to tell you all about, like gender theory and all this stuff. But
Right.
the thing is, in many ways, like, those things just make people more confused.
Right. Right.
Because they're not grounded in the, or actually, here the way I'll put it is this: is that the ability of those people to do what they do relies on the other category of people that keep everything running, like the
Mhm.
power grid,
Yeah.
like that are offering lawn service,
Mhm.
roofers,
Mhm.
plumbers.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I think, because the knowledge of what those people do was so widespread,
Mhm.
especially in the post World War II world. Like, most men following World War II knew how to do, like, basic plumbing.
Right.
They understood how the basic wiring in the house worked and stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
That's because our culture has become so incredible, so feminized.
Right. And I
And
and I and I I also think it's a thing of prestige, right? It's a
yes.
thing of like if you are a plumber or do some kind of labor work for a long time in this country, and by extension and Canada too, right? And throughout the English speaking world, man, like you were told that if you go into these professions that take apprenticeships, or whatever, that was somehow low grade.
Mhm.
You didn't get into university, you didn't go to college. Oh man, you're the you didn't achieve nothing. You know what I mean? But all of us who, and this is even for people that, man, who went into engineering and tech, couldn't find jobs,
Yeah.
couldn't work and everything because so it's like we were fed this sort of lie about like going to university and realizing like it was useless, man. And that's
Well,
I honestly, I'll take that back to everybody talks about these student loans and everything.
Mhm.
And my argument is, you know, I believe that the university should pay for that
Oh,
because
me
they
too.
sold us a pipe dream. They sold us a lie. They told us, you can go and do this and you can go and do that and go into this profession and blah blah blah. And that was all bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it like that, but that's really what it turned out to be. And yeah, so I agree with that. I think it became very female dominated, especially in the social sciences and humanities. And then it also became sort of a sort of a safety net, this idea
Mhm.
that, oh, well, if you go to college, you can, you basically can sit 4 years wasting time to think about what you really want to do.
Yep, and getting trashed every night,
Yeah, yeah,
and women being able to go out and be promiscuous every single night, and some men being able to do that,
yeah,
and basically like and turning them into a bunch of very stupid people that think they're smart,
right,
that are complete and total moral degenerates,
right.
you know?
And then the thing is that our professors and everything blamed it all on post-colonialism.
Yeah.
They blamed it on post-colonialism. They blamed it on um
Well, they always want to externalize the conflict, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah.
instead of having to deal with the inequity around them,
Hmm.
even inequality, even unfair inequality amongst them, like within their community, even within their own families,
Hmm.
instead of dealing with that, because their core, they're degenerates, they they want to externalize it to other things. They want to externalize it to abstract stuff. They want to
Hmm.
externalize it to, like, like to inequities, to iniquities and inequities that were and injustices that were committed like 400 years ago and stuff.
Right.
Now, it's fine to study those things, and it's fine to really try to get to the heart of the matter to figure out what happened back then. Yeah, yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, you majored in history, and so did I. I mean,
Hmm.
clearly neither one of us would have majored in that if we didn't think that was important.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
to live your life within this framework that you're a revolutionary fighting against, like, the subjugation of native peoples in some
Hmm.
random place 400 or 500 years ago. Come
Hmm.
on, that is a cope so that you don't have to deal with trauma that you're normalizing among people around you, you
Right.
know?
Right. And then
And when you start talking
yeah,
like that,
yeah.
these people go bonkers. They
Yeah,
go
well,
they go
yeah.
totally bonkers.
I think it's also a unwillingness to recognize that the sort of civilizations that they're propping up as being sort of um what is the word? They've created
Pure.
this sort of romantic
Mhm.
lie.
They're pure and childlike.
Yeah, they're either pure and childlike,
Mhm.
or they were far more advanced
Yep.
than than these European savages who came over and stole our land
But
and our knowledge.
yeah, but it's funny how they always neglect to mention that they were doing ritual human sacrifice in those cultures. It's just funny
Right,
how they always leave that out, you know?
right. Ritual human sacrifices, uh, slavery,
Yes.
and I had done a video with she's a professor of archaeology, and she talks about um, you know, slavery was widespread throughout the world, you know, and in the Pacific Northwest in particular, the natives here, this is where this whole thing of like natives were peaceful and stuff like that's not true, because the for instance, and as an example, the tribes in the Pacific Northwest used to carry out these called potlatches. They're like equivalent to what a powwow is, you know,
Mm.
where you bring all these items and everything. But these chiefs were bringing slaves to these potlatches, not to like to like as it's not to enslave, not with the intent of like uh enslaving them for labor or whatever, That wasn't the primary purpose of showing them off at the potlatch. The primary purpose of showing them off at the potlatch was for aggrandizement, to show other tribes and other, chiefs, look how many slaves I have. Look how
That's
many
ridiculous.
people I have captured and have at my service. You see what I'm saying? But we get into this whole thing of like, that these groups and stuff were, oh, they're very spiritual, they're very, they had a spirituality that was beyond our understanding. We don't really know, how far advanced, and you see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And I really believe that this is why a lot of times, you know, it's like a cover up, because we don't want to admit that all these groups had problems,
Yeah.
as far as violence and everything else. They weren't. There was a video, there was a movie, I think it's called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And the and the general sat down with, I think it was Sitting Bull or something like that. And he told him, you were not a peaceful people before the white man came. You know what I mean? Because they weren't, you know what I mean? They were
Yeah.
doing stuff to each other. But see, again, this is what leads back to, with our initial conversation, like Canada, I feel is reacting in this way because they have this whole guilt complex. You know,
Yeah.
we feel bad for all the colonization, for all the stolen land that was taken, for people having equal rights. We are gonna keep the narrative of DEI and cultural, diversity and everything alive and well. And that's our counter to America. America wants to go backwards. America wants to, uh go back to this time when, you know, uh, they want to be exclusionary and stuff like that. So we're going to do the exact opposite and fight for that. And then, you know, you say, okay, well, Canada is going to be looking to its mother country, but the mother country is no better. You know what I mean?
Right.
They have that prime minister, whoever he is, who thinks a lot of the same things. So I'm thinking to myself, like, I think, um I don't know what the tariffs are really going to mean for the United States, and we've talked about that too before,
Hmm.
because I think a lot of people are in this mindset that, well, because now we have these tariffs and everything, it's going to make things economically worse for us. But what if that's a temporary thing, and
Yeah.
we're just sort of in this sort of economic
And I think that's
flux.
where I think that's what most people are thinking is that if it's going to bring good manufacturing jobs back to the United States and make a decent way of life attainable for most people again, then this will all be worth it.
Yeah.
And but also too, a shifting of the tax burden from the IRS basically using their little veiled threat of jail time
Yeah.
to anybody that writes the wrong number in one of the columns or something.
Yeah.
Instead of that burden being on American citizens and making them feel like um they're paying their tribute to the emperor, um why not just extract the money at the import export level? And this is the thing, it doesn't even necessarily mean that. So remember that a tariff is not collected on the foreign so the tariff is not collected on the so let's say that there is a Chinese company that's exporting piping to the United States. The tariff is not collected. The tariff is not charged to the Chinese company in China. The tariff is charged to the American business importing the piping.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
when that American business imports, let's say, a couple pallets of piping, let's say the piping is worth like $10,000, just for an easy number, and
Mhm.
let's say there's a 25% tariff on that, that means that there would probably be some exclusions in there, but roughly they'd be paying about $2,500 in a tariff to the federal government
Okay.
on that.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that would mean, most people would agree that they're not just going to eat that cost. What they're going to do is they're going to charge their customers more to make up for them having to pay more for the piping.
Right.
But the thing is, so ultimately the question would be, um, would the life of the average American be better paying a little bit more for items that are imported and then paying little to no income tax to make up for that? And I think average American people are much better off just not paying an income tax at all.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think another thing that would alleviate that, you know, having to like pay more and stuff is that if we had people who had the skills, if we had
Yeah.
more people, more Americans
Yeah.
who had those
Well,
skills
well, and
to do.
and think about it systematically. So if you make it so that it is less expensive for manufacturers to make things here on American soil again,
Mhm.
um, then there's going to be a big incentive structure for people with money to want to train people here,
Yeah.
to train people in technical expertise here, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
because they're going to have the financial incentive. You see the um a pipe manufacturing or companies in America that sell piping. If they're not making the piping here or buying the piping from a company that makes the piping here, you know, they're going to be a company that's got money that they can use to influence political campaigns. Should they be doing that? Probably not. But are they going to be doing it? Of course they will.
Yeah.
For them, they would have no they would have no incentive whatsoever to try to make training programs more accessible to American citizens, because or training programs to help to make Americans more efficient and effective at fabricating piping if they're not fabricating piping here.
Hmm.
If the
Hmm.
pipe fabrication is happening over in China,
Okay.
then maybe they might look at it and say, okay, you know what? If we make a donation to this Chinese pipe fabrication school over there,
Yeah.
then and then we can have more people working in that factory over there that we buy our piping from.
Right.
um and if they're producing more piping, maybe they'll end up lowering the price because they end up selling more piping. And if they're selling more piping, or so if they're selling more piping, they end up lowering the price. Then down the road, we end up making our money back and then some.
Right.
It makes us
Okay,
more
but
profitable.
then the result though of that, the counter outcome could also be that these people who are getting the expertise and the skill set to do that stuff who are overseas end up coming here. And then they have the skill set to do that. And so I'm like not in terms of piping, right? Like
Yeah.
let's just take like if you work at Amazon and you have the skills to do some kind of you know, soft technology, soft engineering,
Mhm.
computer work or whatever,
Yeah.
you can take that skill set and go to a much more affluent country like the United States or Europe, make more money, right? And
Mhm.
that's so now not only do you have the skill set, but then now you're another person living in the United States that, has skills, and then, Americans don't have that. Do you understand? Does that
Yeah.
make sense what I'm saying? I'm trying to, yeah.
So the one confounding factor in there would be that the the pay rates for people that are like software engineers and stuff,
Mhm.
10 years ago, those people were making well into the six figures.
Mhm.
As time goes on, their average salaries have continued to go down.
Mhm.
and as time goes on into the future, they're going to continue to go down more and more and more at an accelerating rate because
That
of
because of
AI.
AI? Yeah.
Yes. Now
Yeah.
the thing is, when you're looking at like pipe fabrication,
Mhm.
you know, certainly AI is going to do things like reduce the demand for a pipe fabricator to have accountants on staff, you
Mhm.
know,
Mhm. Mhm.
or reduce their IT demands because AI is going to be able to help maintain their IT framework and everything.
Mhm. Mhm.
But at the end of the day, your your people that are in charge of the fabrication of the pipes, no matter what that looks like, even if robotics are introduced, you still have to have people that are in there managing the robots, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
and the people that are managing the robots have to understand what it looks like to take the raw piece of metal and 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 do whatever you do to it at the pipe fabrication facility and fabricate it into the finished product of the pipe. Like they have to understand what that process looks like so that they can have their eyes on it. And then if the robot gets off like off center or something like that, and it's not properly picking things up, it's not properly identifying things, they need to be able to go into the robot and be like, okay, well, what's going on here, and then fix it, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
um so I guess the thing I'm saying is that um a pipe fabricator would have no incentive to come to the United States if we don't have any pipe fabrication jobs available
Really.
here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In
Mhm.
that particular sphere.
Mhm.
And then if we keep on bringing in people that are just like general IT specialists, um down the road we're just going to have a lot of people that are just that are just working generic white collar jobs that are going to be replaced, um that are going to continue to be replaced at an accelerating rate by AI, because AI is going to make each individual white collar worker a heck of a lot more efficient and productive than what they are right now.
Yeah.
So because of AI, what one white collar worker does now, I don't know, like maybe in 10 years, one white collar worker will be as productive as 10 are right now.
Right. Well,
So that's going to
that
substantially reduce the demand for those kind of jobs.
yeah, I mean, but
Now you
many
are going to need people managing the AI, though. You are
yeah.
going to need people, but I would guess that's probably going to be a relatively small group of people.
Yeah, well, maybe that might mean a good thing for those of us who majored in something like history or the humanities. We might, we,
Maybe
you know what I'm
we
saying? Maybe we
we can
did do
hope,
the
I
right thing
guess.
after all.
Yeah, but yeah, though, at the end of the day, I think it'll be interesting to see the way the tariff thing plays out.
Yeah,
And something a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of countries around the world, not only have tariffs on the US, and we don't have retaliatory tariffs back at them, but
yeah.
they also have these things that are called like value added taxes, VAT.
Hmm.
And then they also have subsidies too,
Okay.
where the value added taxes artificially um make production in their country um much more expensive. And what
Okay.
that does is it keeps foreign firms out.
Okay.
and
Okay.
and then you have subsidies where the government will give like tax breaks, or will give money to people manufacturing a certain thing or certain things, like let's say antibiotics.
Hmm.
There are governments around the world that will give money to pharmaceutical companies that produce antibiotics in their country, and the reason they do that is because they look at it and say, well, for the sake of our country's national security, we need to have the factories that make antibiotics here in case there were ever a cataclysm around the world. We want to make sure that we're the first ones that have access to these items, rather than having to wheel and deal to get them from another country in the midst of like a natural disaster or something like that.
Yeah.
But what subsidies do is it artificially makes the cost of production cheaper in that country than it would otherwise.
Hmm.
So one of the arguments in favor of tariffs is is to level the playing field for American companies to say that now this would be looking at tariffs from the point of view of trying to accomplish a policy goal rather than just trying to collect taxes.
Okay.
What they'd be saying is, okay, if China is subsidizing their electric vehicle industry, then we're going to put tariffs on their electric vehicles.
Mm.
If they're subsidizing their electric vehicle industry by like $1,000 per vehicle for every electric vehicle that is manufactured in China, let's say so I'm just making this number up. Let's say the Chinese government is giving the car maker a $1,000 check for every car that they make over there, for every
Mhm.
electric vehicle they make there.
Mhm.
Well, what that does is it artificially lowers the cost of making those electric vehicles in China, right?
Mhm.
So that means that those Chinese EV companies could offer their cars on the world market for $1,000 below the cost of production,
Right.
right?
Okay. Mhm.
So what that does is it puts any other electric vehicles made in any other country at a disadvantage,
Mhm.
because unless they subsidize their vehicles by $1,000 or put a $1,000 tariff on Chinese EVs coming into their country, then their domestic EV makers are going to be at a tactical disadvantage,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So there are a lot of things at play with the tariff stuff,
Mhm.
and I mean, at the end of the day, working people have got to start getting a bigger piece of the pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whether tariffs are that thing or it's something else, um, working people have got to start getting a bigger piece of the pie, because just to kind of tie everything up, we do not want our country to look like the economy of South Africa. We don't want our country to look like the economy of a lot of other countries around the world, where you have all the wealth clustered
Mhm.
into the hands of a tiny little percentage of people, and then
Mhm.
everybody else is broke.
Yeah.
That is not a sustainable system, because then the people on the bottom end, they have no incentive to want to protect the system that they're living under,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then you open the whole system up to continuous revolution,
Right.
you
Right.
know
And theft,
yeah, revolution and theft. And the minute that
corruption.
this faction takes power,
Yeah.
then another faction starts rising up, and it's just them eating themselves over and over and over again,
Right.
and your country's doomed at that point. So, you know and in all fairness, the progressives will argue and say, well, there shouldn't be billionaires, we need to eat the rich and everything. Well,
Mhm.
um if you look at what a lot of billionaires are doing in America, I think there's a lot of self-interest in the way that billionaires are throwing their money around in politics. But I also do think that there is an element among many of them where they're saying, this this system enables me to be at the top of the totem pole, and I don't want this totem pole to fall over.
Yeah. Okay.
So at the same time, I think a lot of them are I think a lot of them are living in their own little isolated fiefdoms, where they're in a bubble of a bunch of yes men. So
Mhm.
I think it's really hard for them to understand what the way of life for average people is.
Mhm.
For a lot of them, their only reference point is what things were like when they were still like working for a paycheck,
Yeah.
like back in the 80s or
Yeah.
something.
Right.
Um, so but I think there are a lot of them that, even if they're not looking at it from a moral point of view, I think a lot of them are looking at it from a self-interested point of view, saying, well, I don't want this totem pole to fall over because I'm at the top of it. I love it. I love to be able to have my yacht and my big house on my own little island, and all this stuff. They love it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so the thing is, I think that they also have a reason to try to keep the system going, and to try to figure out how to make like the working class buy into the system more. Because one concern I've mentioned many times before is that I'm concerned that working class people like us at the bottom, um that they don't have that each year that goes by, they have less and less and less incentive to want to fight for this system, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not, I hate communism, I hate socialism. They put bullets in the heads of family members of mine in Cuba. I have no use for the authoritarian for the national socialism of people like AOC and Bernie Sanders and everybody, but I do think that they are pointing out a legitimate problem.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that problem it's got to be addressed. And we
Right.
have to figure out as a country how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think the way you do it is you put you put more money in the pocket of working people. You make it so that working people can afford to, at the end of the month, they got something left over that they can put away.
Right.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think right now there aren't a whole lot of working people that have any money left at the end of the month that they can afford to put away. In fact, a lot of people are having to put things on their credit cards because that's the only way they can afford to live,
Yeah.
and that does not work.
Yep.
That will never work,
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. So I
Well, hey
mean,
man,
yeah,
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you there. You know what I'm saying? I'm with you there. So, it's I guess at the end of the day, what you can say about all these places that we've talked about is some of them are cautionary tales of what could be if we don't fix our
yeah.
economic and sort of cultural, social situation, right?
I want to say one more thing, that
Hmm.
I think a big part of it is the war for minds, you know, and children that are in school in the public education system, and even in private schools too, they are taught um to be quiet little recipients of the knowledge that's pontificated from the front of the classroom, or not, maybe not even from the front of the classroom, but from the textbooks. They're taught to be receivers of commands and doers of the commands. Now there's we're Christians, and I mean, I don't think that either one of us would be opposed to the idea that there are legitimate moral commands that we are to follow,
Hmm.
and that there is a liberty in that. But um they are, the way that kids are taught, or children are being taught to rely on, to at the same time to not be members of a community, and they're being taught to rely on other people for a paycheck, and that the paycheck is how you pay for your it is how you make your way in life. Now that is perfectly fine, right? But I think one big component that's missing is children need to be taught the skill of risk taking, the skill of assessing risk, the skill of thinking about what risks are worth taking and what risks aren't, and to think about debt, and to also think about, um because in America, one of the unique things about our culture that I would argue make us very different from places like the UK and Canada to a smaller degree is our risk-taking ethic of entrepreneurship in America. The way you make
Yeah.
it in America is by writing your own check. It is,
Right.
is by looking around, figuring out what you can do that your community or that a market that you've identified needs, and figure out how to deliver to that market. You know,
Yeah.
that is how you become truly financially independent in America. And it's not about being financially independent. What it's about is not being materially beholden to somebody else. You know,
Yeah.
when someone is working for a paycheck, to one degree or another, they are muzzled and beholden to the whims and desires of their employer. Now, you may receive a paycheck from an employer that tells you, look, you can go out and say and do whatever you want. I in no way am going to penalize you for that. That's very few and far in between,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And I think what that does, but you know, at the end of the day, that's the way that's the way Americans are taught from their earliest years is you need to go to college and you need to go and score the right job. And then
Mm.
the right job is going to give you large paychecks. And then those large paychecks are going to allow you to live a really, really pleasurable and materially comfortable life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, that is just not that's not the reality of America.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
That's a story. You
Right.
know, that's like being asked to believe that the Wizard of Oz really happened,
Right.
or that the Lord of the Rings really happened.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know, you know that is a story.
Yeah. That
You
that
know,
but those stories are meant to inspire us to
right?
take on that sense of, wanting to be more entrepreneurial, or polymaths,
Yeah.
or, you know,
But this whole
degrees.
idea that the way for you to make it, like
Mhm.
the privileged path that you
Mhm.
should expect to travel down is to go and score the right job
Mhm.
for you for the basically the main skill set you need to have is you need to be a great resume writer,
Mhm.
you know, or you need to be a great job interviewer.
Right.
If you can do one of those two things, then the world is your oyster. That's not the
Right.
case.
Right.
You know, the way for you to get to wrestle that pearl out of the oyster is for you to go out and figure out what other people need and figure out how to deliver that thing to other people. And it may start out as something small, but you should always be looking to figure out how to better meet other people's needs. And that is something that's not what kids are taught at all. Yeah, you know, kids are taught, you know, it's something like the more you know and the more credentials you have,
Yeah.
the more you're going to be rewarded for those things.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
is just, you know, that's not the case. You know, it's
Yeah.
almost like the prettier you are,
Mhm.
the more the world's going to reward you for it.
Mhm.
You know, but and that is
Which
true
in
for
some
young women.
cases, yeah, that does
Yeah,
happen for women,
yeah,
though. Like,
yeah,
come on.
yeah. You know, that
Yeah.
is true for young women, but
Yeah.
even for the most beautiful young woman, that only lasts for just a matter of time
Right. Right.
until the next cohort of prettier young women,
Mhm.
um, you know, um, basically offset you, you
Right.
know, and
Right.
then yeah, and then if these things that are really not internally a part of you are the things that you believe are the value that you bring to other people, that's the recipe for mental illness,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and that,
It,
I mean, and we shouldn't just say it happens to women, because it happens to men too. Like, as far
yeah,
as, being the richest man or whatever, or having
yeah,
a lot of wealth, that can
but
be usurped by
that's a
another man.
hyper tiny percentage of men though, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
I was
tiny
just trying to
little.
be fair, Shane.
Yeah,
I'm trying to be.
yeah, but
Anyways, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
you know, that and you know, the thing is, I think it would be a lot more. I think the whole system would be a lot more equitable if in school children were taught, this is how you barter.
Hmm.
You know, this is how you manage risk.
Hmm.
This is how this is how you do a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
This is what a profit and loss looks like. And this is the thing, it doesn't matter what the business is, it doesn't matter what the little entrepreneur or small business is. They all have to figure out a profit and loss statement,
Hmm.
whether it's complicated or whether it's just written in marker on a piece of printer paper. These are my costs for the year, this is what I brought in, and then this is how much money I made, or this is how much money I lost.
Yeah.
You know, if you can get people to think in those terms, I think that we would have a lot more people out there competing in the market. And I actually don't think you would see as many billionaires because there would be
Yeah.
a lot more people wired to go out and compete,
Right.
you know,
Right. And that have
in the
skills, that
marketplace.
have the skills.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, and this is something that I wonder, and this is based on no numbers or anything like that. And I know there are a lot of that there that that a lot of people are probably going to say that this is kind of a wild idea, but when so when you survey the male prison population in America, you have a tendency to find some of the most aggressive, risk-taking men in those prisons. They're some of the most aggressive, risk-taking men in America. Like, and a lot of them are people that that didn't get a fair shake in life. You know, they were born into traumatic circumstances and everything. That's a lot of the prison population. A lot of them didn't have dads. You know, a lot of them were born into bad situations. But then a lot of them too. So and a lot of them were born into bad situations, but at the same time, a lot of them were born into bad situations, and they're also naturally wired to be risk takers, and they're naturally wired to be very they have a natural like aggression. They have a natural hunger to want to like to go out and like do something, to go out and like build, to be a part of something. Like
They have
they're wired to
ambition.
go out, you know. And unfortunately, I think what happens is because of the circumstances they find in life, because of the way that
Stumbling
because the
blocks.
place they're born in, they end up getting hooked up with like drug dealers and stuff, and
Yeah.
they're like that they you know they end up looking at the P&L for like for drug dealing. They're like, damn,
Yeah.
you know. And what they're thinking is, okay, so this is something I could do as long as I don't get caught.
Yeah.
You know, this is something I could do and stash away like $30,000 in like in cash in like
Yes.
1 year or something, and then I could take that money and buy my and like and buy my way into something legitimate, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, and I don't know, I can't help but wonder, and I'm not saying that like that this would even help the majority of people in prison, but I can't help but wonder what if a lot of those men that are in prison for like drug dealing and gang banging and all kinds of stuff, what if they had either a class in school on like managing risk and like on risk taking and on entrepreneurship, on like, you know, oh, you want to know how to start a business? This is how you do it. You know, do you want to be like, you want to be official? Well, what you need to do is go to your local tax collector's office and pay $30 for a business license.
Hmm.
Then you officially can legally do business in the county that you live in.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
oh, you want to know how to set up a corporation?
Hmm.
Well, you could pay a lawyer $500, or you could file it yourself for $80 with you know with whatever state you live in.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to know the basics about taxes so that you can be legit?
Hmm.
Well, these are the basics.
Hmm.
You know, I just I wonder. So I would bet money that that a significant, and I'm not even saying a plurality, but that a significant percentage of the prison population would not be there if they understood how to manage risk and how to funnel their aggression and natural desire to take risks and to like and to do something, you know, to do something that they view to be important and to like to make money, and they've got a
Hmm.
hunger,
Yeah.
you know. If they had been equipped with that knowledge, instead of just being like instead of being like the problem child in the black in the back of the classroom,
Hmm.
that's like, you know, that's sitting there like dropping their pen and making noise and stuff because they're just bored, they're so sick and tired of learning about World War II, you know,
Hmm.
or something. um you know, instead of that, what if they had been taught, you know, the basics of like, okay, so you want to go out and conquer the world? Well, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
This is how
Yeah.
you actually do it.
Yeah. Well, you know, that, I mean, that all goes back to, I think, having positive role models, right? And good
Yeah.
imitation, right? And that's the whole role of, I think, having apprenticeships and, um, you know, skills that can be passed down, you know, that's coming from, you know, a positive, somebody that you have positive to that you want to imitate, you know, that you want to be like, right? So I
Yeah.
think, you know, that's really where the, you know, where the plane lands on that. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess the thing that frustrates me is that you have a lot of these uh that you have a lot of uh boys and guys that come out of bad situations, and they go to school, and it's supposed to be this big rigorous thing and everything. They can't even read whenever they get out of school.
Right. Right.
So, but you know what, I'll bet you anything, if you were to be talking to them about, like, well, this is a book about how this guy came from nothing and started a business and turned it into like a $10 billion business in 10 years. Like, this guy went from the bottom to the top of the hill. That would probably inspire those kids to want to read. And
Yeah.
and you also teach them about profit and loss, and you teach them about, like, this is how okay, you want to go out and conquer the world. Well, the way you do it in America is you do it through business. You do it through
Yeah.
trading.
Mhm.
You do it through risk taking, and legally, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
Like,
But also having a good sense of morality, right? Because
yes,
you need people, you also need people who are in those positions who have a standard about themselves. You know what I mean?
yes,
That they weren't, whether they were at the bottom and got to the top or whether they were already at the top, they need to be models that you want to you have a you want to be like them because they have good character and because they work hard, right?
yeah,
And I think that's the recipe for a good model, because somebody could be rich and not be a moral person. You know what I mean? That they have a lot of problems, even though they're wealthy. And that is, you do see that, right? Just because a person is wealthy doesn't mean, yeah, you could probably do some of the same things that they do to get to that wealth. But what's the one thing that, if you have lack of moral character or lack of whatever, it always somehow catches up with a lot of these people,
yeah,
who don't have both, um,
yeah.
sort of both variables, or, there, you know what I mean?
Well, I guess what I would say to that is that a lot of these people already don't have
Mm.
um the moral grounding. Yeah,
Yeah.
and and I guess I guess the thing I would say is, because of the situation that public schools are in, where you're essentially not allowed to teach morality in schools
Hmm.
because it's considered to be too religious, and there's a
Hmm.
separation of church and state. you
Hmm.
know um so functionally, the only thing that I think you can teach the kids, meeting them where they are, not being pie in sky world,
Hmm.
meeting them where they are, providing them with, like, an entrepreneurship and real business program, not some joke business elective where it's like,
Community
I like doing
service.
like, yeah, like, or
Yeah.
doing like worksheets on business or something, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not teaching them anything.
Yeah.
But if you can teach them structurally, what the rules are,
Hmm.
and how they can win playing by the rules, and how to think about, because really, when you get down to the core of it, what a lot of it is, it's risk management. It's thinking
Hmm.
about, well, what is the risk of doing this, what's the risk of doing that, what's the risk if this thing doesn't work out, how much am I going to be on the line for now, what's the upside of this, what's the downside of that, and so on. So getting them to start thinking in those terms, at least they'd be able to make it materially. And maybe if they make it materially, even if they don't really have a moral grounding, if they understand how to make it playing by the rules, then maybe that gets them into a circle where they can be apprenticed by people, where they can encounter people that they otherwise wouldn't encounter.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think
I
yeah.
know a lot of this is kind of the cart before the horse, or the chicken or the egg,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that people who are not, you know, who don't have a certain moral quality or whatever can't get to that point. You know what I mean? We're especially like with guys, we're all young. We do very silly things when we're young. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it takes a certain level of you know, purification and chastisement
Yeah.
to, help us to sort of learn what's right. You know what I mean? Because, and this is not, and I'm not saying like, somebody would say, well, that's just like what the school does. They're trying to get burnt, get you, to follow the rules. And I'm not saying it that way. I'm saying it like in the biblical sense, right? Where, like David says in the Psalms,
Yeah.
it is good that I have suffered or been chastised so that I might learn, thy statutes, O Lord, or something like that. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, it's good that I went through this learning lesson, you know what I mean? So that
Yeah.
I know how to, manage my money better. I know
Yeah.
how to look out for people that are not who I, who do not mean me well,
Yeah.
right? And who will not create stumbling blocks for me. And that's I guess that's where I come in at it is, yeah, you don't necessarily have to come in with the, be this you know, like, you know, holy person or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Initially. But it's that hopefully through time and yeah, yeah, you're right. Like getting around people that, who can further that, help you to succeed, financially, monetarily, and, you know, in life in general. So,
Well, I guess you could kind of think about it like a board game almost.
mhm,
If you have people that will unwittingly cheat in a board game because they don't really understand the rules,
mhm,
and the only thing I'm saying is I think that there is a percentage of the prison population in America that would fit in that category, that they were cheating because they didn't really understand what the rules of the game were.
yeah, yeah,
Now, then you have people that understand the rules of the game
mhm,
and they actually have a shot at winning, you know?
mhm, mhm,
And then you have the people that understand the rules of the game and and they understand them very well, and they will cheat
yeah,
and
manipulate,
and not be caught, and they're very clever
yeah,
in the way that they cheat so
yeah,
that they won't be caught.
right,
And so I guess the only thing I'm saying is what I would much I think we would be a much better society if the people that were cheating because they never understood the rules of the game to begin with. I think it would just be better if they understood the rules of the game.
hmm,
Some of them would become the people playing by the rules that have a shot of winning, and then some of them would become the people that are playing by the rules but are also cheating whenever they get a chance. But
yeah,
I think it would be much better if everybody understood the rules, then that way more people have a shot at winning. And then the more people that you have playing by the rules, the more difficult, and the more of them that are playing in it, the more difficult it will be for the people that are playing by the rules and cheat whenever they can to win.
right, right.
You know, and
Yeah, well,
that's
that's why we need Jesus in economics, bro.
that is exactly yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, yeah, man.
All right. All right, brother. Good talking to you as always, man.
All right,
Let's
you too.
let's do it again, brother.
All right, peace.
All right, peace.